I know that one. Well, it is 5 p.m. and the bells have just gone off on base. So, welcome everybody to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. I'm your host, David Albright, joined by the famous David Nava. We're both solution engineers here at Salesforce and Military Trailblazers. Each week, we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in the conversation so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is, for better or for worse, how to deal with unexpected career pivots and emerge triumphant. So if you've ever been faced with unexpected career change or want to prepare, in case you are, this is an excellent session to talk to. I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host panel for tonight's session: Elio Camey, Geralyn Hall, Roger Miranda, and Leigh-Anne Nugent. Elio is the manager of Salesforce at Hilton, a Marine Corps veteran, military trailblazer, and Maravis mentor. He has 19 years of engineering, program management, consulting, and customer success experience. Geralyn is a technical account manager at Salesforce. She's an Army veteran and a military spouse advocate with deep experience in human resource management, who made the transition to customer success with Salesforce, where she's been for nearly 2 years. Roger is a senior solution engineer at Salesforce. He's an Army veteran with 22 plus years of service and a dedicated military trailblazer mentor. Roger explored several career paths after transitioning from the military. He's celebrating his 2-year Salesforce anniversary this month. Congratulations. And finally, Leigh-Anne is a senior solution architect at Rafter One, a military trailblazer ally. She specializes in Salesforce field service and has a wealth of previous experience in product management, system administration, marketing and communications, business analysis, and consulting. So great to have all of the co-hosting office hours with us. Welcome. And it would be great if you could each take a moment to introduce yourselves further and share your Salesforce stories. Elio, would you like to take the lead for us?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elio, as you heard from David. I have been in front of Salesforce platform since 2004. I guess you can tell I'm the old salty guy. I have been both a client of Salesforce. I've done implementations, and I have worked for Salesforce. Actually, I just finished a 10-year stint earlier this year, and now I am at Hilton. And like most of you that are veterans, I started in the Corps and Artillery and pivoted multiple times in my career. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about some of those tips I learned along the way. And I'm based out of Austin, Texas.
Perfect. Thank you. Leigh-Anne?
Hi, everybody. Leigh-Anne Nugent. I am calling in from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So from your northern neighbor. Yeah, lots of pivots for me as well in my career. I've been implementing CRM systems for over 20 years, Salesforce specifically since 2014, first as a customer, and then as a consultant, and then a business owner, and then a Salesforce employee, and then now back in the consulting space. So yeah, happy to be here and to talk to you all about these pivots and how to thrive during those pivots.
Roger, how about you?
Hey folks, Roger Miranda. So first job, 22 years. And then after that, in 2 years, I had 4 jobs. So yes, it's the world. It's gotten tricky out there, folks. So yeah, currently based outside of just north of Austin, Texas. I retired out of the fortress, formerly Fort Cavazos, formerly known as Fort Hood. And just glad to be here.
Thank you. And lastly, Geralyn Hall.
Hi, everyone. Geralyn Hall. So happy to be here this evening with you all, or maybe it's morning for some people. I don't know. Good morning if it is. So I started out in the Army, was in the Army for 5 years, did HR type stuff, thought, oh yeah, I'll just do HR stuff out in the real world. So I went out, did HR stuff, was looking for something a bit more portable. My husband's still active duty, and landed in the Salesforce ecosystem through the Hiring Our Heroes Salesforce Fellowship Program. Worked for a small consultancy, then landed at Salesforce, had a slight pivot months back into my current role as a technical account manager. So really looking forward to talking with you all about kind of what that looked like for me and why I decided to kind of stay at Salesforce.
Perfect. Thank you all. Yes, these pivots will be, and unfortunately, if you've watched LinkedIn the last couple of days, it looks like there's a couple other little, things happening there and in the ecosystem with some layoffs and things like that. None at Salesforce yet, but some other, SI teams out there have definitely been feeling it lately, unfortunately. So as the dip of tech kind of continues to go on through 2023 here. So for those joining for the first time, I always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before we open the floor for questions and discussion. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branded related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on this call share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in chat. We'll do our best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. And finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let us know before speaking. We'll make sure to edit it out at the final recording. So, with all of our admin complete, let's get right into it. Really, the crux of tonight's office hours is to really kind of discuss some of the stuff that happened from our layoffs in 2023, right? For 2021 through 2023, Salesforce was hiring like gangbusters, hiring our heroes. If you watch that, went from 15 people in a class to like 100 and something. And then, the beginning of 2023 came and then things kind of pivoted aggressively, one would say. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about, and how do we navigate through that? And many of these things can apply to just coming out of the military as either, dealing as a spouse transitioning out, or even active service member transitioning out and trying to figure that out. So going into that, the unexpected career pivot. How about for the panel, can you share your personal experience with how your unexpected career pivot within the Salesforce ecosystem went? What led to it, and how did you handle the transition? I'll open it up.
Ladies first.
I know I was going to say awkward silence, right?
Yeah.
Nobody. It's that elephant
go.
in the room. Right? I
Required.
mean, Dave Albright and Dave Nava know how like my unexpected pivot went, right? Like it started with a whole lot of tears, a whole lot of, is it me? Is it you? Like, what is going on here? So Salesforce went through a bit of restructuring, kind of starting at the end of 2022, but really full force in 2023. So there were some restructuring, especially in the customer success group. A lot of the success managers, Elio was also a success manager. We were, part of a reduction in force. So for me, I really loved my job. And I think that was the hard thing is, when you really love what you're doing and you really love the people that you're working with, trying to figure out what is the next step. And so I think taking that time to really just breathe and really look at what is it that I would like out of my next role, what brought me the most joy personally and professionally, and how can I make sure that whatever it is that I go after next really is able to tick those boxes. I know that there can be some panic times and everybody is in a different situation. Where you might have to find a job really quickly, or you might have a little bit of time before you can find a job. But I really found the most comfort, at least for me, was being able to take that time and say, what do I want? Take this as the opportunity to really be able to find out what it is that's going to make me happy and fulfilled going forward.
Yeah,
I
great.
can fast follow that one. A lot of what Geralyn says resonates. So I was also part of the same reduction in January. I will say that we were fortunate, privileged, lucky, whatever the word is, to be able to have been given a gift of time. Right, we had a few weeks or months, depending on how long it was for certain people, to just take a breath, take a beat. I was well into my FY 20, whatever it was, 2024 planning. In November, December, I was closing things up and ramping things up, and I was well into it. Like, I had my I'm not waiting for kickoff to start. Like, I'm gonna hit the ground running when February 1st hits. And then January 6th beat me to the punch, and I was like, oh, what? I heard from someone first, though. Like, I got a text message from someone saying I was impacted by the layoffs. And I was like, oh no, like, what am I gonna do? I needed him this year. And then I was like, wait, did I get impacted? But then I got a customer email, and I was like, ooh, I have my first pilot customer. So I, of course, responded to the customer email first. Like, why wouldn't I? And then I was like, oh, bounce back. Why did it do that? Did we pay our Google bill? What did I do wrong? And then I got an email too. So yeah, a lot of that, the first day was definitely, you feel like you got your legs kicked out under you, and you're like, yeah, when you love your job and you love what you're doing and you love the people that you're with, my whole team was let go. We had a lot of tears, a lot of laughing, a lot of, just like, okay, yeah, we're going to be okay. So just the whole emotional roller coaster really was there. But yeah, and even the relationships that we have now, we reflect back even on that day, and I was just so thankful that my leaders were able to hop on a call with me and just just check in, and they were really upset by it too. So it was kind of it's kind of bittersweet, I guess you can say, but yeah. So
Yeah, let me add a little bit in there. So being the older guy in the room, the last 23 years, this is the third reduction of force that I've been directly impacted. And I'll tell you, the first time, and I can hear from both Geralyn and Leigh-Anne, you're not expecting it. It's going to rock your world, right? We need to realize and take this. My tips for the group is private industry is great, but nothing ever stays the same. The 10 years I did at Salesforce, I saw multiple rifts throughout those 10 years. It was unfortunate that the last one caught me, but that's just the reality of business. And so we need to make sure that we can make the proper preparations for when it does happen. It will happen. If you're in any industry long enough, you will be impacted. There's no way around it. For me, I actually looked at people and reached out to folks this time around to see how they were doing. Financially, I had been preparing 12 years for the next one. So financially, my family and I were pretty much set for the long haul. And for me, it was more of practicing what I've been training for the last 5 years at Salesforce. So as a director, I was in an expedited program to move up to a senior director or regional vice president role. And so I was excited like Leigh-Anne. I couldn't believe that here I am, privileged enough to work at a company that long and the same impact, right? You get your name gets called up. Yes, it was bittersweet, but also it reminded me about the things that matter. And I think Geralyn talked about it. Hey, what skills did I learn in this go around? What really I care about and I'm passionate about? What do I want to do next that will allow me to exercise those skills? Because the role that we did doesn't really define us. It's who we are and what are we going to take next to the next role. So I agree with Leigh-Anne and Geraldine. It was a shock, and I remember that. My first one was in 2008. That was a long, or nine, February of 09. That was a long time ago for some. So I felt the same. I understand the feelings that you went through. I didn't have a network. I was the only remote employee for my company that was a California company, and I was the only guy here in Texas. So I learned the hard way to build a network, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah, I understand those challenges, and I think we need to take some of the information that you'll hear on the panels, the tips, and put them in your back pocket, because you'll need them for the rest of your career. I know I have. I'll turn it over to Roger.
Roger.
So I'm the oddball in this group when it comes to this question, because I'm the only one that wasn't impacted directly, but on the round of layoffs of Salesforce. But for me, it was almost, and I can share this with this group because you folks will get it, but it was almost like I survived a mass casualty event. Like,
yes,
I was just in shock, because I'm like, what just happened? And I was fortunate enough that I've got a couple of veterans on my team that I work with, so we have our own little like vet chat internally. And I was just stunned. I was like, what in the world is going on? And then like you just go, like I had to go and take inventory. I'm like, hey, are you good? Are you good? Like, are you still here? And just going out and seeing like it just like deactivated. Kind of depressing. But and it's exactly like survivor's guilt, totally survivor's guilt. And then like survivor's guilt, that I processed that, and then like I got flooded with anxiety because I'm like, oh crap, am I next? Right? Like, is the next rocket attack gonna hit me? And then you start worrying about stuff. But like you can't really worry about the next rocket attack, because if you spend all your time doing that, then you're never gonna be, you're not gonna be functional and get things done. So it was weird, because I was okay with in the military being deployed, and like the impending specter of death was always just kind of there. You dealt with it. You developed some gallows humor, and you just dealt with it. But I'll be honest, the layoff thing rocked me to the core. I was like, oh my Lord, like this is real. And like the financial impact that it could have on like me and my family. And like to Elio's point, like I was okay with money. Like I'd done some good saving, but just to know that you could wake up, I would wake up and like, I'd wake up and check my Slack, and I'm like, is it my time? Is it my time? Not a healthy thing. I kind of got through some of that. But yeah, just like on the flip side piece of it, that freaked me out.
No, I was actually going to say something very similar, because I think everyone on here, Roger, except for you, obviously, but so how it started for me, and I don't want to go down this whole route, but I think I had a demo I was prepping for or something, and Dave sent me an email. Did you get your email? And I was like, what? So, and we don't really operate on email here, so you don't really check it that much. So I look over the email, and it says we're going to start layoffs, and it's like, whoa. And it's like, hey, that's going to happen. But after so many years in the military, that just wasn't a thing, right? When I came in the 90s, the rifts had kind of ended in the military. So pink slips in the military was kind of a thing of the past. And so then this thing started, and we all started to kind of figure it out here. In Slack, you could check, and if they had been deactivated, their picture would gray. And so you would kind of spin through, and it seemed like Thursday mornings, you'd spin through and start looking, or the whisper would come out like, hey, layoffs tomorrow. So you get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and start scrolling. And I remember Leigh-Anne and I were working together at the time, and I saw that, and I was like, same thing, Leigh-Anne. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, we were just working together on field service. Geralyn, and I was like, oh no. And then Geralyn sends me a text message, and Elio, I saw you as well. And it's just, it sounds funny after you've done the things you've done in the military, but you start to get the survivor's guilt, and it's like, this sucks. Like, my friends are getting laid off. Good people, and no one was protected, right? Elio with 10 years, VPs,
executive vice presidents.
and it's just business, right? It's whatever they need to reduce. It goes. And so so it's an interesting thing. Dave,
that event, sorry David, that event should not change who we are. It should strengthen who we are as people. I love my network. I talk to a lot of people. To Leigh-Anne's point, I took time off. I was fortunate. I had 10 years at Salesforce. So we were given, I think, 3 months to look for work. And then the actual end date came. And then based on the time that you had at the company, you got a severance package. And for me, I thought, you know what? I've been at this for a long time, since the core, 25 years. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a break. I've taken vacations throughout my career, but I took literally a month off, not talked about work, which was fantastic. Walked my dog, did some home projects. So yeah, you gotta, when things like that happen, whether it's your industry or your company, there's something that's out of your control. You got to fall back on who you are, and the people that know you. Like you mentioned, David, people were emailing you, and people were texting me or emailing me on LinkedIn. My phone was going off the hook, and what do I do? And I said, hey, tomorrow the sun will come out, and it'll be a new day. Hey, let's talk about this group here specifically. We have these calls. Well, we've had them, David, for how many years now? So it's great to see a lot of, half of the group here, the audience, I know, because we've networked together, we've talked, we've shared stories. That's one of the tips that I want to make sure you go home with, is that be true to yourself, know your strengths, know the people that are going to help you move ahead in your career. It's okay to take a break and talk to folks about it. It was very traumatic. I'm not going to say it wasn't traumatic for me. It was extreme, like Roger mentioned, right? It was like, oh my God, am I next? For some of us that had gone through rifts in the past, for me, it was almost like a relief. And then I started to think about my colleagues, like Roger mentioned, because you guys didn't know if it was coming to you, where for me, we had closure. For me, it was closure. It wasn't the way that I wanted to leave Salesforce, but it was you know what? You can turn that page. I felt for you guys, because I can't imagine what work must have been like when you have 8,000 people gone that you work together with.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Albright.
No worries. You're constantly watching for that email, right? Mr. Nava, you had a comment.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's like if you're a Marvel fan, it's like the blip where half the population one day is gone. But to earlier points that were made, it was done obviously impersonally. It wasn't done based upon someone not performing up to their job expectations. It was done from a business sense, and so you see rock stars across the organization let go.
Serious rock stars.
So that's the first thing you have to realize is one, it's not you. It's done for purposes of the business. And I think we all know at this point why that was, why that happened, specifically at Salesforce, with outside interests kind of pulling some strings. But one of the things that I often get asked about, I know we're going to talk about here in a moment, we're going to talk about, what can we do to prepare? What did you do when it happened? What are some best practices? I'd also love at some point to hear your take on your current security, because I get in conversations a lot of times with folks who are like, hey, David, I'm new to the ecosystem. I heard about the layoffs. What's a safe position to apply for, right? Like, I know customer success folks were let go. Should I go for a CSM role? And I'm like, so I'd love to hear in your current roles, from a risk-based kind of perspective, how safe you feel you are. And is this a good place to be? And if not, like, what are some things that you're doing to maybe plus up your experiences in other areas, just in case, right?
I don't think you can find a safe place anywhere unless even Mark Benioff is at the whim of the the people, the stock owners, and they could, the board could vote him out tomorrow. Look at Steve Jobs. He was fired from Apple, the company that he founded. So accepting the fact that that's just the way business is, that doesn't mean that you have to change, like I mentioned. Right, just make a plan to deal when it does happen. Just a side note, and Leigh-Anne knows about some of the work that we did. My team had a portfolio of $3 billion. We were closing multi-million-dollar deals quarterly, so it had nothing to do with performance. It had to do with the company said, hey, we're going to shift and we're going to go this way. Same kind of scenario. My first riff, I worked at a company where we had a skunkworks team and we did a pilot program and we were only supposed to make, I think, something like $100,000. And the first month we had booked over $2 million worth of deals. So you could say, wow, that's success. 2 months later, it was February 2009, and the economy went down, and the company had to survive. So the CEO had to get rid of half of the company. It had nothing to do with performance. It had to do with survival of the company. So to me, it's you got to build a plan for yourself, analogous of where you work, right? What do you want to do? What drives you? What wakes you up in the morning? Because that's what's going to help you figure out how to navigate in any industry, whether it's tech, whether it's, I'm in hospitality now, right? I work at Hilton. Hospitality is at the whim of, if another COVID comes in and the economy shuts down, I don't think people are going to be going to hotels, right? That doesn't keep me up at night. What keeps me up at night is knowing what I want to do. What do I want to do in my career? So think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, perfect. Lena, you had a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. I second everything you were saying and stuff. I think all of us who were wasn't affected but was still here and waiting for. I know I was one of those folks that woke up at at 3 o'clock in the morning and be like, "Am I next?" And I'm in delivery, and I saw peers of mine who I admire and everything, been here 25 plus years, that was let go. So everybody was emotional about it, and constantly putting on that face as a leader on a program, and everyone's coming to you and saying, do you know if I'm next? And I'm like, I don't know. I could be the next person, but I remember what Elio had told me when we had brunch or lunch, late lunch, was like, have your resume been updated? And I remember telling him, I was like, no, I haven't. I don't update my resume. And he was like, you should. So yeah, I think that's one thing to do, is constantly keep your resume updated, but also figure out what you want to do. We've all been in this ecosystem for a long time, what our passion is. And I think our passion will lead us to the next door, right? The opportunity might be the best one for us.
Yeah, I think I'll say very quickly, you have to kind of stay frosty, right? Keep up your learning and your professional development and be prepared for it. And I think after the first or second wave of layoffs, I had basically, what I knew, what made me comfortable from the military, and that was having a checklist. And Dave and I had talked, and I've talked with most of the folks that were on here, and I had a checklist of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And there was some tequila was like line one. And then it kind of went down a little bit from there. Okay, we're going to take 24 hours, go in the closet, listen to Frozen music and cry for a bit. And then we're going to kind of work this out, take some time, get another cert. And then these were companies I knew that I could kind of reach out to, and people, and that brings me to my next point. The ecosystem network lit up almost like the Intel community after 9/11, with as soon as the layoffs hit, and people were throwing people's names out there. Here is a X number a year person at Salesforce, top hire. I highly recommend them. Send me any information you can, and the network just lit up, which was pretty cool. And I think, again, we've all kind of seen that kind of ecosystem. The community in the ecosystem, the Ohana, is a little different than most. And so I think that was a big saver. So I'd like to kind of put it out there. Could you share some tips on how to expand on and leverage a professional network, especially during unexpected career shift? Who's up? Leigh-Anne?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I coined my garden leave, because what ended up happening was all of these relationships kind of came out of the woodwork, and people were like, oh my gosh, you got laid off. What are you up to? And for the first 2 weeks, I felt like I was still working. I was on back-to-back calls People wanted to know what I was working on. Like, so what did you do? What did you learn? Like, where do you want to go? Like, what is your plan? Like, it was insane, like cool, awesome. But it was people from over the years. And I will tell you that the first call that I had was with my SVP, letting him know, like, okay, dude, I was laid off. Like, if you need anything, let me know. We were working on a bunch of things. Like, I'll let you know where the skeletons are buried, and like I'll help you pick up the ball, right? I had that. So I was like, there's a lot of work that I just dumped on your plate. And he's like, why are you worried about me? So then the second message that I got was from my now employer. And he said, saw the news. If you're interested, there's a spot for you here. Take your time and then just let me know. So I went from, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do, to, oh my gosh, I have an option, all in the first hour. And that completely changed the trajectory of, okay, I'm going to actually take my time. I'm clearly, this is cool. I have an option already. This is awesome. And it's a viable one, and it's great, and it would be good. But I'm going to go out and I'm going to see what's out there. I'm going to make some new friends. I'm going to see what else there is. I wanted to kind of shake up my world a bit too. Like, do I, like, a little bit of resentment and animosity? Like, maybe I don't want to have anything to do with Salesforce at all. You know, so what would my life be without Salesforce? So I was like, okay, well, then who would my people be? Like, who's my Trailblazer community? Because, like, you guys are my people, man. Like, what are we gonna do? I need a new community. So yeah, it was I tried to shake it up as much as I could, but I don't know. I'm still here. I felt like at the end of the day, after the break and making all the new friends, I don't know where those relationships are going to take me into the future, but a relationship that I forged, 7 years ago, landed me this role that I'm in right now. And, I guess I'm still not done yet with this Salesforce community. There's a lot of great tech and a lot of great stuff that we can do. And there's a lot we can do still. So that was kind of my journey, and that networking thing is huge. Elio, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add to Leigh-Anne, and probably the one tip that I do want to leave everybody with: don't try to build a network just because you're looking for a job. Your network should be part of your career
100%.
every day for the rest of your career until you're retired. And I'll tell you why. I network at work and also volunteer for some of this stuff. My network, like Leigh-Anne, I got a call from somebody in my network who said, hey, I have a client that is looking for somebody with your skills. And they asked me, hey, all these Salesforce people, give me a list of 10 people. And my connection said, there's only one person I would recommend to you, and his name is Elio. And that's something that I built a relationship with this person for many years, right? While I was working at Salesforce. So that, just like Leigh-Anne, that opportunity happened because somebody a long time ago told me, if you want your garden to flourish, you got to add water. That means you're not just, hey, I need a job. Can somebody help me get a job? Yes, there's plenty. We're all here to assist. But you got to, number one, know who you are, and then be involved in your network. You don't have to go to every event. You don't have to talk to a million people. If you want to, that's great. But find out how to work your feeding and being engaged to a network, whether you're an employee or not.
Yeah, and I see Dave.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I see Dave Nava is putting out a lot of good comments on here that are spot on. Go ahead, Geralyn.
I was just going to say, I completely agree. I think that was really the comforting part of everything that happened, is just the sheer number of people that reached out and wanted to help. And I tried not to say no to anything. As Dave Albright will know, I went down some pretty crazy paths, and I was like, yeah, I could do this, right? Like, I could totally do this. And he's like, okay, Geralyn, like, ooh, all right.
I think this is a good idea.
Sure, you want to do that? But I didn't say no to anything, because processing through all those emotions, like Leigh-Anne said, you go 1 minute from like, oh gosh, like, I don't want anything to do with Salesforce, to the next, like, oh, but I miss it, and I just don't know. And so you're going to go through all this stuff. And I just would recommend, don't say no to anything. Just explore all those options, talk to all the people, and you only get there if you take the time when you are employed to keep connecting with people, keep those relationships going. And I talk to a lot of people that go through the Hiring Our Heroes program, and they say like, okay, well, what should I do? And I'm like, set up times to network, like keep talking to people, because you just never know. And even now, I mean, I set up coffee chats with people all the time, even though I have a job now, but just to get to know other people, network, and really build those relationships, because those are going to be the people that are there for you and are going to have that little inkling that, oh, you know what, this job might not be posted yet, but I know you might be good. You might be good for this one. So definitely what Leigh-Anne and Elio said, 100%, keep that network strong. And it also helps you emotionally. So be there for each other.
Mr. Nava.
Yeah, I would just say set a repeatable practice for yourself to go out and enter your discomfort zone and have a meeting with at least one person per week that you don't know that may be professionally rewarding for you. So I frequently get mentoring requests and I always say yes. So I have several per week, and I forward a lot of them to a lot of the people on the co-host panel. Like Geralyn, I think, has talked to several people in the past month that I've forwarded her way, and vice versa. So it builds upon itself. And before you know it, like, you don't really have to go out and create these opportunities. They come to you. And that's when you've really done it well and your network is growing, when you've built that kind of spider web of connections that brings those new people into your world and you're having continuous conversations. Roger.
So my advice would be just work in the service of others. So despite, you may think like, I don't know anything, I'm brand new in the ecosystem, or you can have like 20, 30 years. I try to keep a mindset of, I want to help people out, because I remember when I first started out, I was like, oh man, I don't know anything. But then, and I've seen, I've been in the ecosystem long enough, and then I've seen people just kind of like work their way up. I remember my first job out of the military, I was a recruiter, Salesforce recruiter. Never done recruiting in my life, but because of my network, I got hired as a recruiter. And I remember I had a call with Robin Rowley, and she was brand new to the Salesforce ecosystem. And, I talked to her, she'd gotten a few certs and she was trying to get into the ecosystem. And now Robin is a lead SC at Salesforce. She works with Dave Albright and Dave Nava. She's got like 13 certs or something. So it's just crazy to see, and I remember having that conversation with her. And at the time I was a recruiter, I had no jobs for her because she had no experience. I could do nothing physically for her as far as getting her a job. But I talked to her, I gave her some advice. I'm like, hey, just keep doing this. You're going to do great. And so just, do that for people. And then, I kind of believe like, the whole universe law of attraction thing. If you put good things out, then, good things will kind of come back to you. And, if you help someone out along the way, then, it's the butterfly effect, and you'll see them along the way. And next thing you know, Robin's like some, senior director of solution engineering. And I'm like, hey, can I get a job? So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not very touchy-feely in the regard of like, oh, plant the seeds, but it is so true in networking, right? And the ecosystem's small enough that you kind of run into the same names, right? All the names on here you can continually see, and not just here, but they kind of start to populate. And that was one of the good things about the layoffs, is you had some, as Dave said, rock star talent basically seeds into the wind and now cross-pollinating in other places. And now when the next wave comes and we're on it, you now have these seeds that are out there at other trees where you can be like, hey, hey, remember that time? What's going on over there? Do you got any head count? So I could talk about this one probably all night. So especially like Leigh-Anne, you were kind of on that first wave and you were really caught cold. I think Geralyn, Elio, you were slightly later, right?
No, January 4th.
Were you the first wave as well?
Yes.
I couldn't remember that.
Look, I reported to a VP, and she knows I'm a tech geek, so she said, hey, I can't get into my computer. So I had to tell her I had to look at her phone email.
Oh no.
So yeah.
So with getting caught cold like that, obviously you haven't had the later waves, we were all kind of onto it at that point, and we're starting to prep our resumes, and we were getting that plan. How did you handle that? What advice can you offer regarding, immediately switching and trying to find a resume and a job and going after the panic part and the tequila part? What did you do with the resume and stuff like that?
Well, again, it goes back to the networking and being always prepared. So for me, I was waiting we had a hiring freeze, and we were waiting for it to lift for me to move to my new role. Actually, I was coaching my new team while I still had my current team. So I update my LinkedIn profile and my resume every 12 months. And I had mentors who told me that. He said, you need to evaluate as you get older, in your career, and your window of time in the career gets smaller. You need to have this plan of every 12 months. Are you heading, are you taking the right steps to where you want to go? Right. And whether you're at your company or you're considering somewhere else. So to your point, David, you have to have that in your mindset. I had my resume. I updated my resume December before the things came up, because I was waiting to jump into this leadership role, and I was preparing myself for, okay, I'm going to be in this leadership show. In my plan, I was going to be in that leadership role for 12 to 24 months before I should be pushing for the next role. So I was already planning that. I was planning to move to the RVP role. And that's what I mean. Over the last 5 years at Salesforce, I was very fortunate. We had the leadership program. We had the military and Latino force. They did also a program at Salesforce. They ran some kind of report where they identified people with potential to be leaders. And I was fortunate. My name showed up on a list, and they said, we're going to put you in these programs. So I had, not only did I know about networking throughout my career, but now that was accelerated. I had mentors inside of Salesforce that were at the VP and above level, and also outside of the company, because that's what they told me I needed to do in preparation for this bigger role. I was looking at that opportunity as, man, I should have been doing this way before. So if you're coming in, if you're new to this industry, you need to know that has to be part of your plan. Evaluate every 12 months. Hey, did I learn a new skill? Do I know where I want to go? Did I enjoy what I'm doing now? Or did I talk to somebody in my network over the last 12 months that, hey, that's a good company. Your plan could be, maybe I just want to talk to a few people about a different industry. Or it could be as what I just mentioned. Hey, I want to be a leader, and here are the steps I need to take. That's what people do that move up. You see people move up. I didn't learn that. I learned that at Salesforce halfway through my career there, because the first 5 years, I was just excited. I was working at Salesforce. That was my dream job, right? And then they said, hey, we found your name and you show potential, so we're going to put you to these programs. So what I'm sharing with the team here is you have to make a plan. It doesn't matter where you work. It's about you. It's about what you want to do, because guess what? At some point, you're going to retire. Whether you're retiring at 50 or at 70, you got to make a plan, and you got to make sure that you're adjusting that plan.
Good point. Dave.
Yeah, just a quick point to piggyback on what Elio is saying. I always characterize branding by a couple different categories, internal and external. So external being the thing that we're doing right now, right? Chatting, sharing LinkedIn profiles, attending community sessions. Internal branding being focusing on where you work and trying to provide maximum value, not only to just your team, but across teams to the broader enterprise. And so as an example, like I'll volunteer for projects that take me into other teams, that take me into other business units. And I frequently have chats with folks that have nothing to do with my role, because I know that, well, if I get, find myself in a position where I'm laid off, then I have that broader context of folks that I can reach out to and ask for assistance. So be working on your internal branding as well.
Totally. I would say now a step before that is the internal reflection first, just really knowing who you are, what your strengths are, what do you value. Any kind of path or plan or journey you need a compass And if you don't know your values, if you don't know what you like, if you don't know what your strengths are, you'll get lost along the way, and then you'll end up living for someone else's plan. So, right, like it's got to be your plan. So what I did was, you know, I took all those meetings, but then I took about 2 weeks of just, you know, reflection. So I did a lot of journaling. What are the things that I like? And I was surprised that I didn't know what I liked. Like, I found it really weird that I'm like, what do you mean? I don't know what I like. I like to eat. Okay, great. Like, you know, and then I'm like, okay, so every day I would just make it a habit of just saying, okay, well, what I really liked doing was what I liked talking to customers, and I liked hearing what their real problem was. And, you know, it sort of starts becoming a practice, and then you start like revealing your heart a little bit more. I know that it's like, you know, after it being like got stabbed a little bit a few times, like it's okay to just like get back into your soul a bit. But I found that really, really helpful for me. And then I did the Gallup strength assessment. So it's somewhere over there. The Strengths Finder from Gallup. Do you have that anywhere? We can Google that. But I found that it's you can pay for it, or you could do a free one and you'll get your top 5. But that found my strengths. So if you start playing towards your strengths, your journey becomes a lot easier because you're actually doing the things that you like. So I would start with that.
I see Iris and Christopher have hands up. Let's get a quick picture first, and then Iris will go to you, and then Christopher. Does that work for everyone? All right, so we are at the midpoint of our session. Before we forget, which I usually do, let's get a group photo. Important because we always need to be branding, just like we're talking about here. Plus, we'll probably see some of these names again, and pertinent to this conversation in case anything bad happens. If we don't wake up to emails tomorrow morning, we'll post it on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we'll tag everyone in the photo. If you only have your first name on here, feel free to add a chat comment with your full name, and then we'll go ahead and add it in there. So for everyone who wants to participate in the photo, please unmute your video and we'll grab a screenshot. I'll be staring with my mouth open like I always do. I'll try and shut my mouth.
Did anyone else
say
unmute your video? Okay.
Yeah, unmute your video.
Always one comment from Ms. Cook. All right. 3, 2, 1. Mine. Oh, there it goes. Now it's working. Hey, I'm actually like looking at the picture. Impressive.
Nice.
All right, Iris.
There you go, being touchy-feely again, David. Love it.
You know me. Let it go.
Okay, so first of all, I am so bloody impressed by just how fantastic this conversation is and how you guys constantly bring up the conversations that's on everyone's minds and hearts. So thank you. I hope you know that a lot of us were praying for you guys when all that craziness was going on at Salesforce. And earlier, when I saw that you'd been laid off, I was like, that's it. It's all over. You know what I mean? It was so. I know we're not like, I don't see you every day, but it touched all of us. My point that I wanted to make was like, so some of us, like for me, who are on the fringes of the Salesforce ecosystem, when this disruption happened, it like rippled throughout the whole ecosystem. Again, I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say. So David, be ready to cut me off or erase the video if I say something.
Minute 49, Dave.
But like at HOH, when things changed from allowing veterans to not being able to allow veterans just because of the lack of fellowship opportunities, people were very, very, very sad. And it felt to me like I promised people a dream and now we were snatching it away. It was a really hard time for everybody. But then it was around the time that DC World Tour was going on and Salesforce was still saying about the 9.8 million jobs available. So that marketing and then us knowing the reality, it almost felt like I was lying, It was really difficult. And then we could all see what was going on at Salesforce with the layoffs. And what do you see now? Like from, I know no one's got a magic 8-ball, but what do you guys see happening when we're still trying to get new people into the ecosystem? We're still trying to give people hope that, I mean, Salesforce is still an incredible career, but how do we like help people's expectations now?
Well, Iris, if I may, the expectation that you're going to get a job, number one, I'm a big fan of Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and he said you got to be willing to do the work and preparing yourself, right? I never thought I was going to be in hospitality. I'm in a global brand that has multiple orgs. So if you think that Salesforce is the only place where you need to go to get a Salesforce job, that's not the right way to look at it. Is you have to look at, how do I prepare myself for a career in Salesforce? People are not turning off Salesforce. I can tell you that. I work for a company that has, I think, multiple orgs, right? With many users. They need technical people. They need admins. They need BAs. So what are you doing to prepare yourself to be the number one person in that interview, in that resume? Are you taking the time to do that? There is no fast track. And I love what Coach Prime recently said to his team. He goes, you got to bring it every day. So you got to know who you are. If you're coming off the military, focus on the strengths that you have that are not technical, but are soft skills. Because guess what? If you're working through Miravis or any of our technical nonprofits, you're going to close those technical gaps at one point. And so you're going to rebalance your resume and your pitch. So know what you have today and know what areas you want to work on to balance out your resume. There are plenty of opportunities out there. I don't see that slowing down. I actually, during the interview process, during the summer, I actually turned down some jobs because they were not ready for realizing how to really get the most out of their platform. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. These are great paying roles, right? Somebody with my experience, people would have been like, are you dumb? And I'm like, no, because I don't want to be this. So there's opportunities there is what I'm getting to. If you focus on yourself, if you focus on preparation, there will be a role there. The H-1B in the US, right? We can never meet all of the technical roles in the US. That's a fact, whether we're down in the economy or up in the economy, right? The government gives out visas to bring technical people outside of the US. If you're here, if you're a vet or if you're a spouse of a vet, what are you doing to prepare yourself? Are you using all of the tools in your tool chest? Are you networking with people? You're on this call, so that's great. You're already ahead of the game. That's what I would say is learn about positioning yourself and you will find a way.
Yeah, it's a great point, Elio. I know we've got a couple hands raised, and then I wanted to, Dave, if it makes sense, get that last closing question in just to provide some parting guidance. So over to you. I'm not sure who had their hand raised first.
Yep,
Thank you,
that's my thought. Christopher L., you have your hand up next.
Sure, thanks. Like I said, it's
Can you turn up your mic?
Are you not able to hear me?
Barely.
You're just really quiet.
You're very weak.
Go ahead and take another question.
Go ahead, Geralyn, and then Christopher will come back to you.
Sure.
Yeah, it wasn't really a question, but just kind of a comment, something that I learned, and I think something coming out of the military that was very foreign to me was really understanding the business that you're working for. How does that business make money, right? Although there's never any safe positions, as Elio said, there are some positions that are closer to that money coming in than others. And so really looking at that and saying, okay, how close is my position? Is there a direct relation or do we have to kind of fight for those statistics to show how we're really impacting the business? So really understanding that business side, I know it can be difficult coming out of the military because it is very foreign to veterans, right? For that first job, but really taking that time and finding those mentors that can explain to you how does our business make money? And then where does my role fit in to that picture?
Yeah, and for those of you still in the military, that was a foreign thought for me. But when you look at like Dave, Roger, and I, what we do as solution engineers, right? We are talking to the customer, building and delivering demos to them of the product that they then buy. There is a direct contribution to dollars, right? You can see that relationship. Same thing with professional services like Lena, whose team is actually, you know, fingers on keyboards, making things for the customer, direct tie. Now, what we saw in solution engineering is managers are one step back. They're not individual contributors. And some of them who had just been promoted to managers were some of the first ones to get cut, which was really, really painful. And they were, as Dave said, rock stars. So yeah, just thinking about your individual contributor to the money. Christopher, you back up on audio?
I am. Can you hear me better now?
Yep, you're good.
All right, fantastic. First, just a shameless plug. My transition was 2 weeks ago, so not transition, my pivot from paying Salesforce consultancy job, looking for net zero cloud related stuff or sustainability. So that's my shameless plug. I'm starting a bunch of information interviews, looking for people who are working in the field, but I'm putting it out there everywhere I go. My question is related to volunteering. How impactful have you found it to be for your own pivot? And I'm not talking about going and doing necessarily a Salesforce org volunteer. I'm talking about things like I was a Talent Alliance career cohort co-lead back in January. I'm thinking about doing something similar again, or working with Clicked, or being a co-host here for one of the MTOH podcasts sessions. Since it's still kind of fresh for me, I'm in that sort of 2 to 3 weeks of reflection time, and I'm feeling the pull to go back and do that again. Just that it feeds my heart. I like to be part of something bigger, something that I know I can help people along. And much like Iris, during that TAC session in January, it was like, I love helping these people, but there's so much of a struggle to help them find something right now. And it was just starting to really kind of roll at that point. So that's my question.
Christopher, if you can fit it into your schedule and you have a balanced schedule, I'm all for it. I volunteer most of my life, both civic and also through career. Parts of it have helped me prepare myself in for interviews. So talking to people, you get comfortable. So then when you go to an interview, rather than being at home submitting a million resumes, and then you get one interview and you haven't talked to a human being in like 6 months, and you freeze, right? So you can use volunteer for work, but be careful with burnout. That's a real thing in tech. There's a lot of pulls and pushes in tech. And if you don't find that balance, you might be spending more time in one area and stressing other parts. So I think find a balance. And I think it's a great, if you can fit it into that mold, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
That's good.
agreed.
I
It does.
agree.
So we're at the top of the hour. We're going to go a little long as everyone's okay with it. Anyone needs to drop, feel free. But I would like to get this closing question up there. What advice would you give to our listeners who may be going through an unexpected career pivot right now? What's the one thing they should keep in mind?
Only one.
Yeah.
Then I'll just choose that one then. Like, prioritize ruthlessly. choose the one thing that really matters to you, like to your heart, your soul, what matters to you, and prioritize that over everything else.
To add to Leigh-Anne's, if you find yourself in this situation, it's temporary. You can make that go away. And then to what Leigh-Anne made, her comment.
Roger?
So my piece of it, a little bit more like introspective of it. So like, I'll ask you a question. What's the difference between a brand new crisp $100 bill and a dollar bill that's been driven over like 300 times? Nothing. It's still $100. So know your worth. Just because, you were employed one day and the next day you wake up, you're unemployed and it rocks you to the core. Like, yes, but you still have that conversation with yourself in the mirror. Like, know who you are. You're still the same person. Like, damn it, I'm good enough. And it just, you're at a bumpy point, and that's what it is. I mean, like, I think I said this last time I was on this call is, when you're going through hell, don't stop. Like, keep going, and then just know who you are and accept your circumstances. You can't change that, but focus on what you can change. And that kind of goes back to what Leigh-Anne said, like, be ruthless and control what you can control and know your worth.
Geralyn?
Yeah, I would say that, like Leigh-Anne said, knowing what's most important to you, right? Because you may make priorities and decisions based on that, but knowing that if you feel like in your gut that something's just not the right fit for you, don't settle. Like, you can find something that's going to make you feel good about what you're doing. It's going to make you feel professionally and personally really just fulfilled. It is okay to say, you know what, this is just not the right fit for me, and to find something else.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I'm in favor of always having a backup plan. So one of the things that Dave and I did when they were having all the layoffs was we met specifically to talk about, hey, Dave, what's your plan for if you get laid off? Well, what's your plan? And we compared notes. Always have a backup plan so that, if you are caught unaware, you're not caught unprepared.
Yeah, and I think we'll take just 1 or 2 more minutes if everyone can spare the time, because Carrie has a question about trust, and we had some really, really good people, really, really talented people get laid off, offered jobs to come back, and they did not because of the trust issue, right? You just got burned, right? And it was business, and we're all logical enough to go, hey, this is a business decision. But when you're burned, it's hard, right? And so if there's time for this question, Carrie asks, how do you build trust again for future opportunities and teams? Panel, what's your thoughts? Because you all kind of went through it. I think I know some of you got offers, and Geralyn, you came back around as a boomerang. I guess you call it a boomerang.
Yeah, I would love to hear what Geralyn thought, but for me, integrity is everything. If you're saying one thing but doing another, like Iris, that comment that you said about the jobs there, the marketing campaign is saying we're hiring all these people, and yet are you really? That really grinds my gears for sure. Like, that's probably one of my top things. So I usually in those moments, that's the moment where it's like, okay, well, where am I out of integrity? Where have I not maybe, if I'm feeling like I'm burned or I can't trust somebody, is it because I am not trustworthy? So I tend to, every time I, when you point your finger, there's 3 pointing back at you. So I flip my mindset quite a lot, so I take that opportunity a little bit to just think about where am I not creating trust in my little world, right? Because again, back to the control thing, I can only control what I can control. So it's tough to find that. So Carrie, it's a really great question. So I tend to get back to the basics and just think, okay, well, how am I establishing trust just at least in my inner circle? And then I try to rebuild it outside, from there.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I just think Salesforce's this time around was very unique. I never thought I would be a colleague, unemployed person with my boss's boss's boss. Like I literally, we had I don't know if for those of you that didn't get laid off, we had a Slack channel that we built for Salesforce folks that got laid off. And so when you talk about trust, well, the guy that talked about trust to my boss's boss, to my boss, and to me is he right here. So I had a different perspective. I'm like, it's you know, to your point, Leigh-Anne, you got to look inward and say, hey, I know who I am. I know that I'm trustworthy, and I'm going to go on. If they call me, I would probably be more ruthless about moving faster in my direction, what I want to do with my plan. I would not have wasted the first 4 or 5 years of just being a good employee. And I thought that was gonna be the way to move up, is like, hey, you're gonna be the top guy performing. No, to be a leader, you have to do all things. I didn't learn that. So I would probably go into the role and push hard for those things to get me to where I want to go.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm the lone wolf out here, right? That came back to Salesforce, and part of it was a lot of that introspective, and I definitely went through those moments of like, why? Like, what the heck? There must be some like ulterior motive behind here. Something is off, right? I definitely had all of those questions, and I think part of it that was so hard for me is because I came from an HR background and I always knew how the sausage was made, right? Like I knew what went into those decisions. And this was the first time in my career that I didn't know what was happening. And that made me very uneasy. But at, the end of the day, I've worked at a lot of companies, and I know that business can be a pretty ruthless and ugly place, like Elio said, right? There's some things that are out of your control. And I looked around, and the people on this call that are friends, right? They're not just coworkers to me, they're really good friends. That I think is what really brought me back to Salesforce. Is Salesforce hires some freaking amazing people. And those are the people that I just wanted to continue to work with and to work for. And I really loved our customers, still love our customers. And so for me, that was kind of what brought me back. But it was definitely a process of me feeling like, okay, how can I regain that trust in Salesforce in general, just as an employer? So that was definitely a process for me. But I know that if I look left and right, the people that are next to me are going to have my back. And so that's really what kind of brought back that trust for me, Carrie.
Geralyn, I got to add, and you're right, Salesforce, for those of you that have the privilege to work at the company, I am as blue collar. I am an immigrant. I went to state school. I was in the Marine Corps. I was rubbing shoulders with people from MIT, Harvard, Yale, every top school in the country at Salesforce. I don't think I'll ever have that opportunity again to work with some of the brightest people I've ever known and care for. So yeah, it was a privilege. It was pretty awesome. So those are the things that I look back at my time at Salesforce.
Roger, you want to close it up?
Sure. So I think for me, it's, you kind of, if I think of this like in the military aspect, since I was in the Army, needs of the Army, right? Like we're all, for Army veterans, you're familiar with that term. It's like, oh, I really want to go to Hawaii. Needs of the Army. You're going to go to Oklahoma. I want to do this. Needs of the Army. And like, you kind of get used to it. You're like, okay, well, it's because, you obviously you sign up for a life of selfless service when you join the military. And you kind of don't really get, like I didn't see that as part of like the company. And even though like Salesforce is an amazing company. I mean, I love working here, but it's kind of like, I never consider it like needs of Salesforce. Because I always thought of it like, if I do the very best that I can and I give 100% every single day, then, there's no way I'm going to get fired, or get let go. But again, needs of the Army. Then it's like, you know what, Roger? It's like, yeah, And to kind of, to Geralyn's point, it's like, it's the people. Like, we've all been in some crappy units, and there've been some miserable times. But as long as you're surrounded by left and right by people that you like working with, then it makes everything that much more manageable. Because it's like you're going to PCS, or this deployment is going to end, and you're surrounded by good folks, like all you people.
Yeah, and I'd like to clarify too. It's not just the mothership either, right? I worked with some really, really good people who I actually just wrote one this morning. I was like, if we could put a crack team together, right? Some of the people I worked with in implementation were just rock stars. Robin Rowley, as Roger said, just amazing. Just really, really good people that you can trust, very technically competent. So they're everywhere in the ecosystem. You see them everywhere, and that's what's, I think, unique about the Ohana. With that said, I have thoroughly enjoyed this session. I could probably go on for at least another hour and talk more about this because it is a sensitive topic. But before we close, I'd like to thank Elio, Geralyn, Roger, Leigh-Anne for all co-hosting tonight's session. Been awesome having you here, getting your perspective on the topics we discussed, for you to open up to us and be transparent about some of those things. So with that, thank you very much for attending. I hope to see you all in 2 weeks, and have a great Wednesday night for everyone.
Thank you. Great
Thanks,
to see you
everybody.
all. Bye.
Be safe.